Good evening, viewers. Thank you for tuning in to the Doty Report on Comprehensive Health. My name is Yolanda Gibbons, and I am your host. And I'm welcoming you back to another show. The Doty Report on Comprehensive Health is a health education, health awareness show. We address all issues, health related, social, the community, just what's happening around us. The overall goal is really to provide you, the viewers, and the community with resources, information. Just have some conversation. We are promoting healthy living. We all want to live a better, a healthier lifestyle. We want our communities to be healthy, and that's what we're here for. And hopefully, the shows will be, as always, informative, and you take away something from it. This show is an initiative of the Doty Report on Comprehensive Health organization, a nonprofit organization that has been serving the Chicago community for 20 plus years. It was founded by Don Doty. He is the president and CEO, and I always like to give a shout out to him, hey Mr. Doty, and his beautiful wife, Miss Joyce, and thank them for, I feel honored to be able to host and be a part of such a fine organization that has a legacy and really a great history. So definitely go to their website, georgiadotyhealth.org, to learn more about the organization. So let's get right to the show. Today, we are going to be talking about mental health and our mental wellness and how we even keep our sanity during this time. Life is already, prior to the pandemic, just hard. So much is always going on in our lives. And here we are, all excited about 2020 and the 2020 vision. And boom, we get hit with this pandemic that started out being put your mask, stay in the house for 21 days, then went to, hey, this is August. That was in March. And I know I can't imagine anyone not saying that has been some level of stress that they have experienced during this time. I believe I've mentioned on a few shows, even myself, it's been there's been stress levels. I lost someone to COVID-19 that was very dear to me and that I love. My daughter gave birth to only she wasn't 6 months pregnant. She had the baby early during this pandemic. That has been stressful. Of course, just being at home and quarantining ourselves, and it's just been rough. So we are here today to talk about increasing our mental performance during the pandemic. I don't know how we do that, but we do have an expert here that's going to help us understand that. And before we go to our guests, I want to give some well wishes to Dr. James Dentley. He was supposed to be one of our guests, and he's not able to make it because power outage. Those of us that live in Chicago know we had a little storm, and we still have tons of people that are without power. That's stressful. That's mental. We've just had a lot going on that could definitely, affect our mental well-being. So I want to bring on our first guest. It is Michael Wiley. He is a licensed professional counselor. He has a master's degree in counseling and sports psychology from Adler University. Thank you, Michael, for being here, for giving us your time. And I'm just thank you in advance for imparting some good information.
Thank you so much.
So I want to, before we start the discussion, I want to give you the opportunity to tell a little bit about yourself.
Yes. So again, my name is Michael Wiley. So my professional background is in clinical therapy and sports psychology. So I'm a licensed therapist, and I'm also what's called a mental performance coach. And I work with professional athletes, college and high school athletes. And in that particular lane, it's more so about helping the clients that I work with identify some of the mental challenges that are associated with the sports that they play or just with the performance realms that they're in, and coming up with tangible strategies to actually make improvements in the psychological element of their sport. I think most people will say that there's with any style of performance or type of performance, there's a mental element to it, a mental element. But when you ask most people, well, what do you do? What are the tangible things that you actually do to make gains in those areas? That's where you kind of draw a blank a lot of the time. And so
Right.
that's kind of what I do. And then with also with the clinical therapy, I work with individuals and couples, and a lot of that is on stress management, anxiety management, helping people identify and align their lifestyle with their values, and with couples, aligning communication, identifying communication styles, making sure that instead of kind of moving parallel, that we're intersecting and we're moving through life together, and just kind of figuring out what it looks like to essentially, yeah, live a lifestyle that's actually based through your values and integrated, with your values. So little bit about me. And then I guess originally I'm from Seattle, Washington. I've been in Chicago for about 6 years. So
Oh,
from the West Coast,
me too. Me
yeah, these storms out here, I'm not really used to that. Like we get earthquakes and I guess
too. Yeah.
mudslides out there. So these tropical storms that happen after five, like I think yesterday it was fine, and then 5 minutes later,
Right.
there's power outages and Wi-Fi going out, and so yeah, I mean, I'm not really used to that still, but I love Chicago. It's my second home, and I'm glad to be here.
Awesome, awesome. I love Chicago too, but I'm definitely still an LA girl. I am, but I definitely love Chicago. And Chicago, we've had a lot going on. We have had a lot going on
Yeah,
that multiply probably our mental health.
yeah.
But let's get into it. I just want to start this conversation about with asking you as a counselor, what has it been like for you since the onset of this pandemic? What have you seen, if anything, different?
Well, a lot's changed. I think I remember in particular myself. I think it was around March. I think it was the 18th when I got word from my job that we were gonna be going home and working remotely. And I'm sure right around that same time, all of the clients, or if not most of the clients that I work with, if they hadn't already been sent home to work from home, at that point they were. And so some people already had a profession where there's a remote element and it's
Mhm.
like working at the office element. But I would say most companies that I saw didn't have a robust or
Yeah.
well thought out, like, what does it look like to actually work remotely from home?
Mhm.
And then something that happens to a lot of people too is, their bedrooms and their living rooms overnight transformed into their workspace.
Right.
And so, your work commute might have went from, a couple miles to a couple feet.
Right.
And there's a lot of adjustment mentally and physically involved with what that looks like. I have a lot of clients with children who overnight,
Mhm.
now they're at home all day with
Teachers.
their children. Yeah, teachers. I have family that are that work in CPS, and and then just me myself. I had to essentially develop an at-home workspace where I was still able to do my job and still be able to focus on providing the best support I could for my clients, but also keeping myself mentally healthy.
Right.
And that was an adjustment that all of these things are happening simultaneously. So if it felt like a whirlwind for any of you, you're not alone, because I think that was actually a shared experience for most people that I encountered, most of the people that I work with.
Right. Right. So, what would I mean? Let me roll back. First of all,
Mm-hmm.
our mental health is so important, even prior to the pandemic. I know that as African Americans,
Mm-hmm.
some time ago, and I think that's definitely shifting. That there wasn't an emphasis on the value of seeking counseling or therapy or just going to talk to someone. We have raised awareness on that.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely see more of
Yeah.
people who look like myself, not just in the profession, but actually seeking. And I always say we all need to talk to somebody. At various times in our lives, if not regularly, at least when you're going through,
Mm-hmm.
to kind of help you It's just like going to the doctor to get a checkup on your heart, your lungs. We want to get a checkup on our mind. But I would first start off by just asking the fear.
Mm-hmm.
This is something new, and we probably didn't get it, the first week or two when we had to stay in. But then
Yeah.
when things didn't change, I know our anxiety went up. People began to get fearful of like the unknown.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say to that aspect of just our mental being and having those feelings of fear and not knowing how to deal with the unknown?
Yeah, and I think the hardest thing to do with those emotions is probably also the best thing that you should do, which is first just accept how you feel.
Mm-hmm.
And in the beginning, it was a bit of a whirlwind. And I think one of the first emotions that I recognize a lot of people felt was confusion. And, well, I mean, what do we do with that? It's
Right.
when you're confused and when you don't really know how to feel or how you feel, then I think that it kind of puts you in a situation where you don't actually know what the next step should be. But after that confusion, I think that there was a lot of fear and a lot of doubt. There's been a lot of issues with job security. There's been a
Mm-hmm.
lot of issues in the
Right.
beginning with food security. Right when the pandemic started, you could go to some of these grocery stores and the shelves are empty.
Right. Right.
Toilet paper gone, all the meat's gone, all the canned food is gone, and so there was a lot going on in the very beginning that I think brought up a lot of mixed emotions. And like step one that I always work with clients on is just figuring out what does it look like to accept your emotions. But acceptance doesn't mean submitting to your emotions.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean giving in. It means acknowledging where you're at and then thinking about what do I have to do in order to function first. We might not be able to thrive right now, but what do we do to get back to a point of functionality that's available to us? It can be pretty disempowering to not know what to do. And,
Right.
one of the things that I think a lot of people lost overnight, that sense of control over
Yeah.
their lives. Yeah. And, just trying to restore some semblance of that by reminding my clients. It helps myself having these conversations with them too, because sometimes it's almost as if I'm talking through some of the stuff that I have to do as I'm working with them, because anyone in the profession will tell you that, we have a lot of the same challenges that the people that we're working with do.
Mm-hmm.
And, nonetheless, that sense of control, I think, is important to remember in the beginning. There are some tangible things you can do when you start to feel that fear or that doubt actually come in. And when you think of it, then like acceptance is actually a really active process. First you identify the emotion, and then it's kind of like figuring out what are the next best steps to do something that will regain some semblance of control over my life.
Right. Right. I was just gonna say, I'm the bossy one and want to be in control of everything. Not having control. What?
It was gone overnight. Yeah.
So what about what have you seen, or what would you even say? And thinking about now that we know here in Chicago
Mhm.
public schools won't be returning in September.
Yeah.
And I remember some jokes on social media about husband and wives. Now they spend it every day, every hour together, plus the kids, which can be stressful.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say to families? Like, what have you seen in cases like that where now couples are dealing with being together all the time,
Mm-hmm.
and even on top of having their children and having to deal with that aspect?
Yeah, so the kids and the adults, I don't think anyone's used to being around each other 24 hours a day.
Right.
We all typically have our own lifestyles and our own lives and our own kind of pockets of society that we retreat to throughout the day, and then we come back at the end of the day. So in the beginning, I think, again, there was a lot of confusion, but one of the things that I've worked with a lot of my family clients and married clients and couples with kids is figuring out what does it look like to reestablish a new norm or a new routine. And that's
Mhm.
going to be different for everyone, because one of the things that most families did have to deal with is that overnight childcare disappeared. And so now parents are having to find their own workspaces. In the beginning, the kids were still in school. Most of the kids were still in school. And so they also had to find their own workspaces. And it takes a lot of communication. I think it's important for parents to really first go easy on themselves because, uh,
Right. That's
I
true.
mean, unless you were around in the 1910s and 20s, the rest of us haven't seen anything like this. This is the first global pandemic in
Right.
100 years. So this is all new to us. So again, making sure that that communication begins from a place of acceptance and from a place of just understanding that, you know, this is new for all of us. But and then with parents, it's important for parents to actually, this is a great time to use this as an opportunity to collaborate further. Communication is everything in a marriage.
Look at it.
It's everything in a marriage. It's everything in parenting. And again, it's a great time to reevaluate what kind of systems have we set in place to actually run our household effectively and efficiently. And again, that creates opportunity for collaboration between couples and between parents,
Like that.
and also involving the kids in these conversations. Because one of the things that I'll also say with to the parents is that not only can we model these behaviors in terms of coordinating the household together as a unified, couple, but we can also tell them literally, this is what we're doing. You know, I wanted to actually model what it looks like to you to have to recalibrate the household, for us to have to figure these things out together. And by actually telling the kids, like, hey, in the future, you know, if you have kids or you have a family, I want you to remember this is what it actually looks like. And so again, this is a great opportunity to increase collaboration and to just see it from a place of growth, an opportunity for growth, as opposed to a detriment, or something that's that we don't like. Because I know it is actually very easy and understandable to get caught up in sort of the negative emotion that this situation has brought upon all of us, but it's also an opportunity to make some changes and to reevaluate.
Right. And I think you said it. I think I said a few times, probably like to my daughter, like, but it ain't just us. It's like everybody, and it's trying to, because we oftentimes when we go through things, it's, you feel alone and you feel like, oh, why me? But in this case, it's like, why everybody? It's not definitely, not just us. So one of the things I know people have mentioned, and jump in anytime and bring me back if I'm all over the place. I'm just trying to get it all in. But the feeling of loneliness, because there are, especially like seniors who live alone, a lot of us that people that live by themselves, and during that real quarantine time, or just trying to stay in and not, it's not your regular kind of social. How would you say a person deal with that feeling of loneliness, and how could someone who knows someone is like kind of like in home, not really going any place because maybe they have health challenges, help them from a distance to deal with that feeling of loneliness?
Yeah, and this is one of the best times to reconnect with family and friends as well. We're all at home, so if you call someone, chances are they'll pick up. They're not going to be busy, and if they are busy, again, they're at home. And so just making those efforts, if there's people that you haven't talked to in a number of years, or family members or friends, I mean, even as far back as, high school friends, college friends, this is a great time to actually rekindle those relationships, schedule some Zoom meetings or some video chats with people whose face you haven't seen for a long time. And particularly when you know that someone is living on their own, again, great time to give them a call and to just let them know that you've been thinking about them. I think we underestimate the value of human connection, because although we're constant, like Chicago's one of those cities too that I realized when I came here, everyone is moving, but people aren't interacting. And so, we really live in a world. If you've ever been on like public transportation, what you'll see is, there's 100 people on the bus, but everyone's head is down in their phone. So like we're all present and we're all around one another, but we're not necessarily interacting. We're not actually engaging in a way. Social media, although it's a medium for interaction, isn't our most natural form of human interaction. Actually, looking at a screen, or even doing what we're doing right now, this would be much better in person. If you could see my energy, if I could feel your energy, this is the next best medium by using, video chat. But nonetheless, there's also no replacement for that human connection. And, going and making sure that you build those connections and rebuild those connections. And then also individual self-care is another thing that I would say too. When you know that when you're the person that's by themselves, there can be a lot of stress and anxiety associated with that. And so I always talk about making sure, one, that you're able to at least try and identify the emotion that you're dealing with, and then having some sort of activity that helps you address that particular emotion. And so what I mean by that is, like, when I feel stressed, there's certain things that are going to help me address stress better than others.
Okay.
There's certain activities that will help me address anxiety better than others. So, like, I can just give personal examples. Like, when I'm stressed, I like to go and exercise, and I like to listen to music. So exercise helps me work like the tension out of my body,
Mm-hmm.
and then music helps me kind of transform an emotion. If I'm
Yeah.
feeling a certain emotion, I could use different songs and different playlists and things
Yeah.
like that to help me get back to where I'd like to be. And so, like, identifying how you feel and then having some sort of strategy specific to actually working on that feeling is actually really helpful. And when you think about it, it's important too to just be in tune with yourself. This is also a great time to do some self-reflection.
Right, right. Now that was gonna be like my next question, but music definitely for me. But it's so crazy because I forget. I forget. But then when something just hits me, like turn some music on, my mood completely
Mhm.
change, just shift, and it changes. And I'll be like trying to tell myself, you gotta remember, when all else cut that music on, and man, it's for me, it's an amazing tool to
Oh
use when
yeah.
I'm feeling overwhelmed or lonely or stressed or any of need some motivation.
Mhm.
That's definitely a resource for me. But I was going to ask, so is there a way for us to know? Are there indicators or red flags, so to speak, for us to know in ourselves and
Mhm.
in the people around us that okay, this whole thing has gotten the best of us mentally, of that person
Yeah.
mentally, we need to seek some help. Are there some indicators for that?
Yeah, and so so I'll kind of talk about individually, and then also with people that maybe that we're observing might need some assistance. And so individually, it's important to monitor your thoughts and to monitor your body. And so monitoring your body, especially because that's an area that we don't always tend to scan for like stress being manifested somewhere physically.
Okay.
And so one of the ways that you can tell, if your stress is if you've been sleeping less, if you've been noticing that you're kind of losing some weight or you're having a lack of an appetite, some of these more subtle things actually can be reconnected back to stress, because when our stress increases, these are some of the physical side effects that'll tend to manifest. Also, like muscle tension, if you notice that you just kind of been a bit more tense lately, maybe for you that manifests in your shoulders, maybe it manifests around in your chest or in your hands or in your legs or in your behind, or you know these are different signs that you can use to scan the body and actually connect that back to, okay, even though I didn't necessarily have a stressful thought or I haven't been thinking stressful thoughts,
Mm-hmm.
my body is giving me signals that I'm actually dealing with something, and perhaps
Okay.
I need to start paying more attention.
Okay.
And so physical tension is a cue essentially to start
Okay.
to monitor thoughts and start to actually monitor behaviors as well. If you find yourself not doing things that you would normally do, I know it's a pandemic, so we're a bit limited in terms of what we can do. But nonetheless, if there are any at-home routines that typically you would do, like hygiene, I know that it's something that isn't talked about a ton, but it's important. If you find yourself not going through your typical routine to like get ready for work just because you're at home, I would actually say get up and shower, put
Hmm.
on the button-up shirt,
Okay.
put on the dress, put on the suit, because you're still transitioning the mind from a state of, being in like my pajamas and just kind of
Yeah,
chilling to
yeah, yeah.
actually getting into a work environment style of thinking. And so that's something I would definitely recommend. Get up and make the bed, clean your area, make sure that your workspace is clean. And when these things aren't happening too, then that can also be a sign of stress.
Right.
And so in other people, especially those that you have relationships with, if there's a particular cadence or rhythm to your communication, if you all tend to text throughout the week or call each other several times throughout the week and that kind of drops off, or if you start to see like different style of like social media posting or different conversations, or even a lack of that behavior when that used to be a norm, then that's a good sign to just reach out to someone and ask them how they're doing, and just make sure that they're okay.
Okay.
Um, so, there's some stuff you can do to kind of monitor yourself, and then there's some signs you can use to actually be a support for others. Nonetheless, it's all like the underlying theme is, you know, pay more attention and just make sure that we're learning ourselves as much as possible and being in tune.
Yeah, you said some good stuff. Just some basic stuff. So, how do you tell someone you think they should go seek help, counseling, therapy, talk to someone? How do you have that conversation?
I just ask them what their goals are, you know, because at the end of the day, you can call. So, like when I'm working with athletes in particular, I'll just give some examples. We don't call it therapy. We call it, I'm a mental performance coach. And
Mm,
so, you know, there's the title of the industry is sports psychology, but we actually posture ourselves as mental performance coaches. And
okay.
that kind of removes some of the stigma from actually working on, you know, the psychological element of performance. But there's a lot of overlap. A lot of the time, we're doing therapy in the context of sport. And then, you know, in terms of helping someone actually decide to take that step, yeah, it's about asking them, well, you know, what are your goals? How do you actually want to feel in your life beyond the stigma of going to therapy or seeing a counselor?
Mhm.
What's your life satisfaction? Are you happy with where you're at? Are you happy with where you go with where you're going? Do you know where you're going, or is that something that you think you might need some assistance with? And so some of these more basic questions actually are some of the most important questions in life. And I think that also the pandemic has kind of revealed to us that some of the more basic elements of life are also the most important. And you know, right now, life satisfaction is actually it's been lower. You know, mental health has been a challenge for a lot of people, understandably. And
Right.
um, you know, just thinking about, if do I want to feel better? Do I want to have more clarity with my life? Do I want to figure out tangible ways to live where my values are actually integrated into my behaviors and into my thinking, where I'm a reflection of the best self that I'm striving to become? Like, if these are things that you actually say that you'd like to do, then I would say that you actually might want to pursue counseling or therapy.
Right.
And we can call it whatever we need to call it in order to get you through the door. If you want to call it life coaching, if you want to call it counseling, therapy, I'm all for whatever actually helps the person.
Okay. Okay. That's good. So I know we always talk about eat right, exercise. You know,
Yeah.
eat, you got to eat certain things so that your body function a certain way. We got to drink, water to stay hydrated. Um,
Mhm.
can you speak to that same thing as it relates to our mind?
Absolutely. And so, when you're thinking of a feeling or manifesting a feeling, you know, like, let's say confidence, for instance, we're looking to build our confidence or boost our confidence. Confidence is as much of a state of being, like I'm in a state of feeling confident, as
Mhm.
it is an active process. There are tangible things that you can actually do to work on increasing the presence of confidence in your life and actually manifesting that feeling with the sense of regularity. And so, you know, one of those things might be preparation. You know, it might be surrounding yourself with people who exude and exhibit the type of energy that you're looking to actually do. You know, it might be educating yourself further on a particular topic. But nonetheless, these are tangible actions that actually raise the probability that you're able to manifest the presence of that feeling in your life. And so confidence isn't just like I'm feeling confident, I'm confident, or I'm not. It's something you have to actually do stuff. You have to actually put yourself in position to grow in that manner. And this is with all kind of feelings. You know, I describe manifesting feelings as a very active process with my clients, because it should be thought of in that way, that if we want to be happy, then we have to do things that are likely to increase our happiness. It's not just going to come. And that's something that I think is very important to understand, that, you know, feelings are fleeting, but the actions to create them and to keep them around is the thing that we actually do have control over.
Okay. Okay. So when all said and done, when all this is over, if it's ever over, um, from a mental health professional, from a counselor,
Hmm.
what state will you think we'll be in when they say you could take the mask off and some normalcy occurs? Do you think that what do you just see us as a whole, as a community, we will be mentally?
Well, you know, so this is me giving my, you know, hypothetical prediction. Um, you know, I think that right now, again, it's a great time to kind of work on ourselves while we're in our homes. And when we come out of, the shell, essentially come out of our homes, I would anticipate there is going to be a bit of hesitation and a bit of fear and doubt. That makes a lot of sense because we are coming out of a global pandemic. There are a lot of questions about the safety of,
Mm-hmm.
like large public gatherings, and not even large public gatherings, but small stuff like getting on the bus to go to work,
Right.
walking in crowds of people. Like in Chicago, this is a city with, 3 million in the inner city, 9 million in the area, 10 million in the area. And so something as simple as getting on the train to go to work
Right.
is something that I would imagine, if you feel some anxiety or some stress about that, then you're definitely not alone. And I would actually anticipate that there's going to be a lot of that. And again, I think when we start going back to work and physically having to show up to our offices, if we haven't already, that again, it's an opportunity to call people and or text them and just ask them how they're doing, how they feel about going back to work, because it is scary.
Yeah.
and and it is something that I think that we have to be supportive of one another with, because I don't necessarily know how everyone's going to feel, but I would anticipate there's going to be a lot of fear and a lot of doubt, and we'll have to be supporting one another.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, so this is the Doty report on comprehensive health. We are talking about our mental health, our mental state during this pandemic. If anyone, I see some people commenting saying that this is good, great conversation. Definitely, if you have a question or a thought that you would like to share, you can post it. We'll definitely try to get to it. We are talking to a licensed professional counselor, Michael. He is giving us some basic stuff that we probably never would have thought about. So definitely really appreciative of that. So the topic of the title of this show is increasing our mental capacity during this time. So what increasing mental performance during the pandemic? So what does that mean? And then how do we do that?
Yeah. So I would say in increasing mental performance is really about. Hold on, let me close my door here. Kind of loud. Yeah. So increasing mental performance is, I would say, it's really about first targeting what challenges are at play in whatever our like performance area is. And so step one is just identifying what am I actually looking to make gains in? Where do I actually require some sort of process or strategy to help me improve? And then it's a matter of doing some goal setting, but not in just kind of writing down our goals. Goal setting in a professional manner has to actually look and operate a certain way.
Okay.
And so, I talk a lot about process versus outcome goals.
Okay.
And so the difference between the two is the outcome is that's the ultimate goal. That's like graduation from college, and the process is everything we do to get ourselves there. And so once we have identified, like this is what I'm looking to improve, then it's about setting that ultimate goal, whatever that outcome might be, and then developing a process to help us get there. And so that outcome is really important because the outcome is actually what actually informs the process. We design our process relative to whatever our outcome is. But 9 times out of 10, we spend most of our time actually in the process, actually doing the actual work. And
Mm-hmm.
so once your outcome is set, and you design that process, it's kind of like the old statement, plan your work, work your plan.
Okay.
And just keeping it as simple as possible, not overcomplicating it, and also just remaining flexible. I think that increasing performance in any capacity is about flexibility. When the goal changes, when the outcome changes, the process has to be adjusted. And we have to be mentally flexible in that regard, just making sure that we make the adjustments and that we're not so rigid that when something presents itself that we have to respond to, that we stick to our original plan nonetheless. It's like, no, we actually have to make these adjustments in order to still be successful.
Right, right. Good stuff. Good stuff. I'm gonna just ask a question about because I know
Hmm.
many people struggle even prior to the pandemic and after the pandemic is happiness.
Yeah.
It's such a challenge, and people won't really admit it, but there's a sense of unhappiness going on with a lot of people. Can you speak to that, or and being able, how do we as a person that's feeling having those feelings first be able
Yeah.
to admit it and then do something about it?
Yeah. Coming to terms with a lack of happiness, I think, is one of the most difficult experiences that any one of us can have, and a lot of us do have in life. And I think it comes down to values. When we realize there's a lack of happiness in our life, often what that means is that we also are recognizing actively that our values aren't aligned with our behaviors and with the things that we're actually looking to create for ourselves. And so I do a lot of work on values and first helping people identify what their values are,
Hmm.
because your values also help you identify your needs. If I value hard work, there's a chance that I'm also going to need some sort of challenge in my life or some sort of goal that I'm actually working towards. If I value honesty, then if I'm a business owner, I'm going to need to set fair prices. I'm going to need to treat my customers, with integrity and those sorts of things. And so really identifying values and then figuring out what are actual tangible ways to where I can implement my values into real behaviors that I actually live, and figuring out how do I then generalize these values in my life so that I'm not showing up as a different person everywhere that I go. Whether there's a pandemic or not, this is something that is very important to think about. How do I show up as the same version of myself everywhere that I go, so that I'm not having to switch up being in front of him or her or my job, or when I'm with my friends. Like, 4 or 5 different versions of yourself is very difficult to maintain. But when you actually focus on your values, you realize that even though you have all these different hats, they're all going on the same head. And so it's important to make some level of consistency within who you show up as everywhere you go. And that's all about aligning your values. And then not just talking about values, but actually having an emotional connection to values, things you truly care about. And then, of course, coming up with, you know, the behaviors and the actions, and developing thought processes that also reinforce values, and just working to increase the presence of that in your life. And happiness tends to go up when we recognize that we are actually living in alignment with who we say we want to be.
Hmm.
On the flip side, when we realize we're living in a way where we're not acting like how we want to be or who we want to be, then happiness tends to also correlate. Lower happiness tends to correlate with that.
Wow. That was good stuff. That was definitely like I wanted to stop and take notes for some of that, but this will be recorded, so I'll get to go back and
Very
listen
good.
myself. Um, it just wouldn't be me if I did not ask why we have you here. And I'm gonna shift a little bit from the pandemic, but at the same time, it's a pandemic too. What has happened across our country, and then what is
Yeah.
happening here in Chicago as it relates to the civil unrest. Um, I just would like to know your thoughts from a psychology perspective of what is going on as it relates to that, and how I don't think people understand how such occurrences affects the health of our community.
Yeah, and specifically for the Black community,
Mhm.
our country was built on a system of injustice and of systemically excluding Black people from citizenship and from even basic human rights in this country. And I think what's happening right now is the same thing that happened in the '60s, where people are waking up and they're deciding that they're tired of the treatment that they've been enduring for so many years, and they're deciding to do something, but also not always knowing where to put the energy. I think that there's a lot of energy, and that's where we see, with the rioting and with the looting. Um, I forget who said it, but that rioting and looting is, the language of the oppressed. And I'm not quoting that directly, but nonetheless, this is a country that actively celebrates the, genocide and rape of Black people. When
Mhm.
you think of the Jefferson Memorial in Washington, D.C., uh, Thomas Jefferson was a rapist of Black women. And this is documented, where through DNA as well as circumstantial evidence that this was what he was doing. And a memorial is a celebration. Mount Rushmore with his face and George Washington's face. George Washington, I think, owned something like 600 slaves throughout his lifetime. He's on the $1 bill, the most common currency we see. I'm from Washington State. These things are so baked into our society that we actually no longer even recognize what's happening. The Washington Redskins NFL team was forced to change their name recently because the name Redskins was considered racist.
Right.
But when you think about it, it doesn't matter what they changed the name to because the city is named after George Washington. And
Right.
again, when's the last time you heard someone question, well, why is the capital of the nation named after a slave owner? Or we have black men playing on a football team named after a slave owner. So these things are so ubiquitous in our culture that it's to a point to where I think that the black community in particular, the people who built this country for free, have decided that they're tired of the treatment that they're receiving and they're going to do something about it. But also not always knowing exactly where do we put this energy, where do we put this fire in us, and sometimes this is where we'll see the looting and we'll see a lot of the protests. But the spirit of the people is active right now. The people are speaking, the people are taking action, and beyond just the looting and the rioting, there are really good things happening right now, and that can't continue to be the focus. The focus has to be actually the spirit of the people and making some of these changes where we're beginning to really recognize what's going on and the systems that essentially haven't been changed. And we address a lot of the surface level stuff, or essentially the symptoms of the condition. Wealth inequality isn't an issue of housing discrimination. It's not an issue of access to jobs. Wealth inequality was created by slavery.
Mm-hmm.
And everything after that, such as housing discrimination and redlining here in Chicago, all of the systems that were built to essentially exacerbate the condition are essentially a symptom of the condition. The condition that created that was slavery.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I think, again, the people are waking up. They're tired of what's been going on, and they're trying to figure out a way, an effective way to create change. And there are a lot of different areas that changes can and need to be made. But nonetheless, I think that these are conversations that have to be had out in the open, so that people do feel heard, and that they don't just feel heard because hope isn't a strategy. We have to actually do things to make change.
Right. And you talked about having conversation. So I was going to ask that next. In lieu of everything, the pandemic, and as the months go by and we get to the end of the year, how important is having um, uh, some conversation, some dialogue, some kind of restorative type of conversation. How important do you think that is being able to bring people together just to kind of talk through it and talk through what we've all experienced collectively?
I think it's very important. A lot of the issues that we're talking about in public often occur in isolation. We're all experiencing individual, like, let's say, like microaggressions is something where someone says something to you a certain way, or they kind of look at you a certain way, or it's the treatment you've been getting at your job for years and years, but you can't pinpoint it, you can't label it. It's important for us to actually have these conversations in the open, because typically what you'll notice is that we all have a shared experience.
Mm-hmm.
But when the incidents continue to occur in isolation without that dialogue, then we continue to suffer in isolation. We continue to manifest stress and anxiety in isolation. And the people who are unaware of what's going on, to those who have that condition as just an everyday life kind of thing that they have to deal with, need to hear about it. And then also the people that are living, in those conditions need an outlet so that they're not internalizing and manifesting the stress that actually comes from that situation.
Okay. Okay, good. So conversation, for those of you that are watching, definitely a start, to help us and just talking about it. Always when you just talk about it,
Absolutely.
share it, kind of share the experience with that. So our the CEO, the president of Georgia Doty Comprehensive Health Organization, is a veteran, and we always talk about or share his experience with PTSD.
Yeah.
Um, and sometimes people just connect PTSD only with veterans. But I've learned that it's not just something that, veterans experience.
Yeah.
Do you think that you'll see a more of that as we come out of this pandemic? And how do people recognize that? And is there anything that you could share with those that are watching as it relates to PTSD?
Yeah, and first I want to be as respectful as possible of all of our veterans, and just let them know that, thank you. But then also understanding that PTSD isn't exclusive to a war scenario. Oftentimes, it's just connected to a shocking life event or an unexpected life event that essentially can create an intense and traumatic emotional response in the body. So that can be like a sudden loss of job. That
Mm-hmm.
can be a relative that unfortunately a lot of people have lost family members and friends to the virus, or they lost their income overnight and can no longer provide housing or food for their children or their families. And these are all experiences that will fall under that category of something that could trigger a PTSD response. And so just understanding that those kinds of experiences, they're not isolated, they're very common. And when they do occur, I think it's important to actually go and get help and to realize though that now, especially if you're not someone that typically would want to actually walk or travel to an office, that these sort of services are actually available remotely right now
Mm-hmm.
at a higher rate than ever. And in the comfort of your home without actually having to expose yourself to the public, you can actually access these services in a way where you might not have ever had that ability to do so. And so just kind of thinking of it that way too, where sometimes the help that you need might actually only be a call away. And now is a better time than any other to actually make that call, especially if you ever had reservations about doing that, in a more kind of public manner.
Right, man. I love that. Yeah, you guys hear that? But everybody that's been hesitant to go in to seek counsel or therapy or just have those type of conversation, you can do it right at home.
You can do it right now. I'm at home right now.
At home. So now is an excellent opportunity. Yeah, man, I didn't think of that. But now it's definitely an excellent
Mhm.
opportunity to really get those resources. Someone asked a question. Do you think there's a need for more mental health clinics?
I would say yes, but also we have to make sure that that mental health clinicians, like I think this is a profession, and not just speaking from like for myself, but I think that this is a profession that actually similar to teachers, similar to school administrators, that actually does deserve like higher pay, because one of the things that you'll notice is that for a lot of people who pursue this profession, when they come out of graduate school, they're not making the wages and the salaries that they need to actually live the lifestyle that they wanted. So it really does become a question of whether or not, even though I want to help, whether or not I pursue this profession. And
Mm-hmm.
so, sometimes it is an issue of, there are a lot of good caregivers out there, and then a lot of good, like people that will want to do this work that kind of go elsewhere to other professions.
Mm-hmm.
But nonetheless, to answer the question, basically, I would say yes. But also, as a society, the reason why I kind of just said what I said is because we also have to put more emphasis and incentivize the profession.
Right.
We really do have to make more of an emphasis on the mental element of performance, because it doesn't really matter what you do. There's a performance element to every job. And, showing up as your best self isn't just physically showing up. It's also making sure that your mind is right so that you can focus and do your job.
Right. I have taken you everywhere,
Everywhere.
all over the place. I've had you all,
Come
but you,
on with it. We're good. Come.
man, did your thing and really giving us some great information. But I'm going to open it up. We don't have a lot of minutes just for you to share anything that you feel like needs to be said. You need to share any resources that people can tap into that you may know about. The floor is yours.
Yeah, and so first I would just say, again, this is the best time if you think that you might need some mental health assistance, if you've been really struggling in isolation, to, make a call. You can go on psychologytoday.com. There's another website, I think it's goodtherapy.org. For the Black community, there's therapyforblackgirls.com. I believe they actually have a therapy for Black men website now. And so these are all resources where you can go and find somebody, and the majority of these clinics are offering remote services where you actually won't have to leave your house. If you have a crowded home and you have kids and you, have partners or roommates and you need some privacy, if you can maybe go sit in your car, or if you can find somewhere else where at least for an hour you'll have some privacy. and be able to have these conversations, definitely do it. Because again, this is a great time to actually seek these services. And a lot of places are offering sliding scales too. They understand that, this is a time where people do have a high rate of job loss, and just attrition in the job market in general. And a lot of therapy practices are actually offering services at a discount or sliding scale and that sort of stuff. And then the other thing I would say is don't put too much pressure on yourself to feel like you need to come out of the pandemic like this new person or anything. Like,
Good point.
set your goals,
I love that.
set some goals for yourself, and then plan your work and work your plan. Because the thing about it is, whether you put pressure on yourself or not, the pathway to improvement is always the same. You have to create a plan, and then you have to work that plan. And so instead of putting the pressure on yourself to have to transform and be this new person coming out of this, set yourself some goals and then methodically work through that plan. That way also you're not necessarily stressing about whether or not you'll be 5 or 10 steps ahead when you get out of this, and you're still making progress that is measurable, so that when this is over, you actually have, made some improvements and made some gains in the area that you'd like to. Um, and I think the other thing for me is, I do at some point this year, I have a book coming out, um, called Magnetic Regularity. I have another training on uh, racism and just understanding white supremacy and the concepts of whiteness and how we all navigate that as a culture.
Mhm.
And that's going to be centered around a concept called psychological colonialism. And so that'll be coming out. And so I would definitely, if you want to engage with me, go to my IG at mwiley jr 206, and definitely reach out to me. You can DM me. I've been making frequent posts. I just thought that now was the time really to also begin to work on a lot of these projects that I had, and to really utilize the time at home as effectively as possible. And a lot of these projects I've been working on for a while, and I just needed some additional time. And the universe has blessed us with the situation where, although there is a lot of pain and there's been a lot of setbacks in this time, there's also been a lot of opportunity and a lot of chances to create new beginnings as well. And I think it's important for anyone listening, if you have any of these kinds of projects or things you've been thinking about for a while, that now is the time to really work on this stuff. Now is the time to really set yourself a schedule, and to when you think about like travel times, right? Like if it takes you an hour to get to work, an hour to get back, you got 2 more hours that you probably never had. What
Right.
you going to do at that time?
Right.
And really thinking about that too, and trying to maximize, more out of your day. Even if you only use one of those hours, what can you do in 60 more minutes a day? And so just that kind of stuff. I try to always give people tips to be productive and to take the pressure off of themselves to have to be perfect in the process.
Right. Well, your Instagram probably gonna be blowing up because you have been absolutely amazing. I love that you said don't put the pressure, because we see if you're on social media to post and people saying if you ain't done nothing, if you haven't accomplished XYZ since this pandemic, then like something's wrong with you,
Yeah.
and while you're saying definitely, lay things out and set goals and, work through it, definitely don't feel like you can accomplish the world just because we've been in a
Yeah.
pandemic, because it is a lot of pressure, and you do begin to feel that pressure when you're constantly hearing that. What you been doing all day?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, and the thing is, when you plan your work and you work your plan, a byproduct of actually doing that is getting to the goals that you set for yourself, anyways.
Mm-hmm.
And so, a byproduct of organization, a byproduct of goal setting, is always going to be progress. And
Mm-hmm.
then when you just think of it that way, then the pressure isn't necessary. Trying to force yourself into doing something or drag yourself to doing something isn't necessary. It's really just about, when you have a plan and you sit down and you work that plan, then the progress is going to come. And the stress isn't doesn't tend to actually be a very good motivator to actually get us to do things and to do them well. And so there's no need for that type of self motivation. And just in the like, I work with professional athletes. I've worked with lawyers and doctors, high level college athletes, that actually doesn't tend to correlate to success. It doesn't. And it tends to correlate to stress and anxiety and to other things that actually become a detriment to performance when we're trying to push ourselves in a way that isn't natural to us, or that, is a bit further than maybe we're ready to go.
Right, right. Man, this man has given us the mental health, what they say, sauce, the nuggets.
Sauce, man, sprinkle a little game.
You giving it to us. Um, we winding down. We only got a few more minutes. So I have
Yeah.
to ask this question, just came to me.
Yes.
When seeking out a counselor or therapist, is it how important is it that the person looks like you? How important if as a, I'm a female, do I want a female?
Mhm.
How do we, help us be able to pick someone that might be a great fit for us?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And so, one, not to be cliche, but everyone is different and everyone has different goals. And
Right.
I'll say that therapists of all colors I've seen can do very good work in conceptualizing the issues that we're dealing with. There's some things that are universal. Stress and anxiety is a universal experience.
Mhm.
When it comes to more specific issues that you actually want to incorporate into the process, like if it's important that you actually visually or culturally identify with someone, then I would say, okay, if you're a black woman, you might actually want to work with a black man or a black woman.
Mhm.
If you are looking for someone who specializes in PTSD, then
Mhm.
maybe you might want to look for someone who actually has that particular skill set as opposed to someone who just works with stress and anxiety.
Okay.
And so, again, especially when it comes to ethnic identity and identification with your therapist, if that's something you think that will be necessary and effective to helping you open up, then by all means, do what you have to do to help yourself make the gains that you're looking for. And sometimes we do have specific life issues that we're looking to work through that actually it would be helpful. Like, let's say if you're a male and you've had negative experiences with women, it could be quite therapeutic to have a woman actually help you
Okay.
work through some of your issues, and vice versa. If you're someone if you're a black woman who has had, negative experiences with black men, it could actually be quite therapeutic to work with a black male in a safe setting who's actually there to be an example of someone who isn't going to harm, but to help. And I think that sometimes, let's say in that last example, if as a black woman, if you've had negative experiences with black men, that might also create an aversion from wanting to seek out help from a black man. And then maybe you go and meet with a woman. But actually, sometimes it might work better the other way, where, kind of the source of the harm, or what you at least identify with as being, a source of harm or a source of pain in your life, might actually be helpful to work with a man to perhaps provide different perspective, or just an example of someone, again, who isn't there to harm, but to help, to be an example in your life of someone um, who really is supportive and has your needs, you know, like has your needs at the front of their interests is as well.
Right. Thank you. So we're at the end. I can't believe it. We can go on and on and on and on. Thank you, Michael,
Thank
so
you.
much. This has been so informative to me. And from the comments, it's been informative to those that are viewing it. And we'll probably show this over and over again. This is definitely a much needed conversation that
Yeah,
we keep having. We need, everybody to understand the importance of our mental health, and that there are resources out there, and that is, we all need to talk to somebody. You know what I
yeah,
mean? And we need to start with self care. You talked about self care, and then be able to reach out to those who we think may just need a helping hand or need to talk to someone,
absolutely.
and be confident in about doing that. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I know we are definitely going to have you back. How can we not
Thank you so much.
have you?
I appreciate the opportunity. Yeah, I'm just happy to be here and happy to be able to support, what you all have going here. Wonderful, wonderful show that you have going. And just let me know if you ever want me back. I'll be here. I'm in the Chicago area too, so we're in the same city. So maybe at some point in the future we could even do something in person. That would be wonderful.
Yes, that is a goal. I definitely want to have a panel conversation like this, but it be kind of like in person. to give people opportunity to, feel comfortable and have these conversations. Again, this is the end of our show. This is the Doty Report on Comprehensive Health. My name is Yolanda Gibbons. I am the host. I love it. I always get to meet some amazing people and get some amazing information, not only to share with the viewers, but to also have for my own self and be able to impart them in my own life. I thank everyone that is watching from YouTube to Facebook Live. Keep watching the Doty Report. We are just trying to make some of the things that we deal with as it relates to our health and the health challenges in our community, simplify it and connect with each other and be able to provide some resources for you. Our mental health is so important. We cannot forget it. It's just as important as what we eat, working out. So keep that in mind. I think it's important for us to realize that doesn't mean something is wrong with you if you need to seek out some sort of counseling. Just means that you need to seek some counseling and you need someone to talk to. Again, I thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you again on another Tuesday. Stay safe, everybody. Stay safe, check on your people and have great conversations. See you next time.